Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan. This is my May wrap up. I am going to try to keep this kind of speedy because we are already well into June. So let's just go ahead and get into it. In May, I finished 13 books and I had one DNF. The book that I DNF'd is called 123 by Lori Frankel. This was a book about this really weird town with a weird history where something happened that affected all of its residents, and now a lot of them have physical or mental deformities or abnormalities. And so part of the book is kind of figuring out what happened to them, and then the other part is following the characters as they move forward from that and try to get kind of justice for what happened to them. It follows three triplets that call themselves 123, so that's what spurred the title. I was very excited for this book because I had read this author's previous book called This Is How It Always Is, and I really loved that one, so I was hoping I would love her newest release. Unfortunately, I was just bored. There was a mystery element, but I did not care by 3/4 of the way through this book about how the mystery was gonna wrap up, so I figured I would just cut my losses, DNF it. Not something I do all the time, but I feel good about DNFing this one. So I will not be including this in any of my stats or anything for the rest of the wrap up, but I did want to mention it as one that I DNF'd, and I got about 3/4 of the way through. As far as stats for the books that I did finish, ratings, I had a lot of meh books this month. I had 6 of the 13 books were 3 stars. As far as worst books, I had 1 1-star and 1 2-star. And then as far as better books, I had 2 4-stars and 3 5-star books. So I am happy about having 3 5-stars. But again, the majority were the middle of the road 3 stars. As far as genres go, the most of the books that I read were in the mystery, thriller, horror genre. I did dabble a little bit into horror, which is not my typical genre, but I still lumped it in with mystery thriller because that's my kind of comfort zone. And I read 7 of those. And then I read 2 contemporary romance books, 1 sci-fi, 2 historical fictions, and 1 fantasy book. Also definitely outside my comfort zone. And then as far as formats go, I really mixed it around this month. I read 3 books that I owned and read completely physically. I had 2 books that I got from the library and read completely physically. I had 4 books that I owned physically, but I read primarily via audio. And then I had 4 books that I read only audio, don't own the physical book, and got it through services like Scribd or Hoopla. So now let's get into the books that I read. A few of them were for videos that are either already out or are coming out. The first video that I'll mention is my Thrill Till the Weekend reading vlog. This is a 72-hour readathon where I actually read 3 books. First one that I read is In the Tall Grass by Stephen King. This is actually a horror novella about these people who are driving down the street. They come across this big field with tall grass and they hear a little boy calling to them, calling for help. So they go into the grass to try to find him and save him, and then very weird things start happening in the grass. This book novella was super outside of my comfort zone. Again, I don't read a lot of horror, so I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't really get it. I don't know if that's just a common theme of horror novellas, is that they're just weird for the sake of being weird and you're not really supposed to get it, but I like a little more answers in my books. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I did also watch the movie adaptation in that vlog and liked it a little bit better. So check that out if you're interested in those thoughts and kind of how the book and movie differ from each other. And then I read The Missing by Kirsten Modulin. This was the buddy read for that readathon. And so a lot of the people who were participating all read it together and we all talked about it together. I gave this book 1 star, which feels really harsh to me. It maybe is more of a 2-star objectively, but I just found so many things to kind of pick apart about it, plus what other people were saying about what annoyed them and frustrated them about it also added to it. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't recommend this book to anyone, so that's why I gave it 1 star. And then the third book that I read for that readathon is Confessions by Kanai Minato. This is a Japanese thriller horror book that's been translated into English. It is about this teacher who is getting revenge upon a couple of students that she thinks killed her daughter. And this one I have pretty complicated feelings about. I went into this book knowing absolutely nothing about it. I wish I had known a little bit more about the plot as well as the way that it's written, because it is separated into like 5 or 6 parts and each part is from a different perspective. So it does a lot of like repeating scenes and situations from those different perspectives, and each time it's told, it kind of changes the reader's opinion about what happened, which I think is a really interesting way to write a book. I just didn't know that's what it was going to be going in, so I didn't really set my expectations right, I don't think, and it was also a lot slower paced than I was expecting. So I think had I known more what to expect, I would have enjoyed it more, but I only gave it 3 stars. And then the next video that I filmed in May is my book of the month reading vlog. That has not been posted yet, but is going to be very soon, so I will link that once it is live. And so as to not spoil that video too much, I'm only going to give you very brief synopses and my star ratings for these books. I'm not going to go into my thoughts too in detail, but the first book that I read is The Change by Kirsten Miller. This is a fantasy book primarily about three middle-aged women who are going through menopause, and through that experience they are also gaining magical powers, and they're working together to use their magical powers to kind of get revenge or get justice for things that have happened around them. Definitely unlike other books that I normally read, I gave this one 3 stars, and again, keep an eye out for that vlog to get more opinions about this book if it sounds like something you would be interested in or you're curious about. And then I read Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This is a thriller set on a mountain. We're following a journalist who is on this expedition with this mountain climber man who's going to break a world record, and she's going to basically tell his story about breaking that record. And then it's revealed that there may be a killer on the mountain with them. I gave this one 5 stars. And I'm so excited for you to watch that video to find out why I gave it 5 stars, because it seems like this is kind of a polarizing book for some people. And then lastly, in that vlog, I read The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is a historical fiction book set in the Great Depression during the Dust Bowl about this family who moves from Texas to California. And I also gave this one 5 stars. Okay, then to get into the last couple physical books that I read, the next one is A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. This is a very short, I don't know if you'd call it thriller or a horror because I'm not super familiar with horror. I don't know if this classifies, but it's about these 2 teenagers or young adults that are like canoeing together in this lake, and they look down and they see the roof of a house in the lake, and so they realize it's an entire house submerged underwater. So then they get scuba gear and go down to explore it, and it's all about that. This was a fun read and definitely a quick read. I actually read this all in one sitting while I was in the car with my friend Gwen, and I liked it, but the ending was very unsatisfying to me, so I gave it 3 stars. But I do know that people who like ambiguous, unexplained endings really like this book. So if that's you, definitely take my review with a grain of salt, because I don't like that. I like things to be explained, and this did not do that for me, so that's why I gave it 3 stars. And then also physically, I read The Good Lie by A.R. Torre. This I read for Jessie's book club over at her channel, Reading with Jess. She does a monthly book club where her and a guest read a backlist thriller. This month it was Ashley from Ashley's Little Library, and they picked The Good Lie to read, and I really like this one. I gave it 4 stars. I feel like it was just a really well-written thriller. You know, when you can just tell like there are so many layers and they all just come together at the end in a really satisfying way. That is what this was for me. It was nothing like absolutely mind-blowing or a new favorite thriller or anything, but it was a really solid read, especially for being pretty short, like less than 250 pages. It packed a real punch and told a really great story, so I would definitely recommend it. This is about the serial killer called the Bloody Heart Killer or something like that, who is known for kidnapping teenage boys, holding them hostage for several weeks, and then brutally killing them and like cutting out their heart or something like that. He's been taking boys in this town, and then all of a sudden his most recent victim escapes, and so it's all about this detective who is trying to solve the case, and then also about this therapist or psychologist who is putting together a psychological profile of the killer in order to try and find him. Again, thought it was super well done, so I gave it 4 stars. Okay, getting into some other books that I read not physically. The first one is Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. This was an interesting one. It's kind of a sci-fi about this futuristic world where almost every single animal has gone extinct, and we're following this woman scientist who is following a group of birds as they migrate south for probably the last time. And she's also working out some family issues and history that she has. I can see why people like this book. I just didn't personally love it. I found it to be really slow, and I didn't really understand where it was going or what we were doing, like meandering for so long on different like thoughts and locations and things that just didn't seem to make a difference for the story. So I would recommend it to people who like slow-paced, really character-driven books. If you do, I've heard that this book has made people cry, so if that also interests you, then there's that. But I ended up giving it 3 stars. I also read Book Lovers this month by Emily Henry. I probably don't have to explain what this book is, but it's a contemporary romance book. It is about this literary agent and a book editor who had like a weird encounter together that kind of set them off on the wrong foot, but then they both meet again in this like small town, and both characters are very like New York City people, career-driven people, kind of not stuck, but in this small town for a short period of time, and so they feel kind of out of place, but they are similar in that way, so they feel some refuge with each other. I get why people are loving this, but I did not absolutely love it. I loved both of our characters, and I really wish that this would have just been set like in New York, because I like city people, I like city settings, but the small town part of this book just felt meh to me. So overall, I gave it 3 stars. It is my least favorite of Emily Henry's most recent romance books. Again, I get why people like it, just wasn't my thing, and I gave it 3 stars because of that. And then another new release that I read is Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. I actually did read this one physically, but I am currently lending it to my mom to read. This is a thriller about this woman who is about to turn 40, and she's very nervous because when her own mom turned 40, she had like a mental breakdown, went crazy, and has been kind of locked up ever since. And so our main character is really worried that the same thing is going to happen to her. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It definitely has another twist at the end. Classic Sarah Pinborough that you are either going to absolutely love or absolutely hate. I liked it, and I thought that it was original and something that I haven't read before in a bunch of thrillers, which I always appreciate. It did leave me with some lingering questions, so that's why it's not getting a full 5 stars from me, but I did give it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it, and probably will be on the lookout for other Sarah Pinborough books in the future because she is just so creative and different with those twists. Okay, a few more to talk about. Next book that I read is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This is a contemporary romance, or actually kind of a futuristic romance, where this app has been invented where you can actually find your genetic soulmate. And we are following this data scientist woman who doesn't really believe in the process, but she gets sucked into, sending in her DNA. She ends up matching with the founder and CEO of the company. And so not only are they kind of interested in what that means, but the company also decides to turn it into kind of a PR opportunity. So it's a little bit like fake dating because they want to pursue this match that the founder got. I thought it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. I did really like the idea of the Soulmate app. I also really liked that our main character had a daughter. I love when romances have characters with children. It just, at the end of the day, felt really light and fluffy to me, and I just don't really enjoy light and fluffy romances. If you do, then by all means, this book and Christina Lauren probably are definitely for you. I don't know. I need something a little bit more. I need a little more emotion, a little more grit or something to make me fall in love with a romance. But this one was just middle of the road, 3 stars. And then the last book that I read and have to talk about is Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I believe this is an Audible original book, which means you can only listen to it on audio. There's no physical version that I'm aware of, and it's also very short, like 1 or 2 hours long. It is about this woman who finds out that her husband is cheating on her, and so she writes a letter to the other woman's husband to let him know that their spouses are cheating on each other with each other. Did that make any sense? I don't know, but this woman writes a letter to the husband saying, hey, your wife is cheating on you. I would want to know if I was in your position, so I thought I would write you and let you know. And then they start a correspondence and kind of find solace in each other because they're both going through the same thing. This was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. This was the emotional type of book that I was looking for. The way it was simultaneously heartbreaking, because this is obviously an awful situation for both of them, but also very heartwarming and hopeful because they did find such support in each other and were able to kind of pick each other up just through letters. Was really beautiful. It's set in like the 1970s, I think. And so I highly recommend listening to this. If you have Audible or a way of picking this up, it's definitely worth the 1 or 2 hours it takes to listen to it. I would totally read a full book about these characters, and I know a lot of other people have said that. I agree, but this was a really great way to round out my reading month. So with that, that is all that I have. Let me know how your reading went in May and what reading plans you have in June. Other than that, I don't have anything else, so I will let you go. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.